let's say that you're given this problem and the directions tell you to use the distributive property to remove the parentheses. Well, before we can even begin to work on this, what we first need to do is we need to understand what exactly is the problem asking and what is this right here that I'm underlining. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first kind of show you how we can make sense of what's inside the quantity or the parentheses so that then we can understand it a little bit better. So I went ahead and copied it, and what we have is negative 2x minus 3 plus y. First, the best way to kind of make sense of this is by understanding that these aren't letters, they're just variables that just represent unknown numbers. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and represent this 2x first, and then I'll get to the negative here in a minute. So the way that we can make sense of it is by looking at it as not as 2x or 2 times x, but two groups of a number. So if I have two groups of a number, well, I made two groups, and in each group is the same number. Now, what we can do is we can look at this negative a little bit differently, not as negative, but as the opposite. So what we can look at is now we don't have two groups of x, we have the opposite of two groups of x. And so the opposite of two groups of x are two groups of negative x. And then moving on, I'm going to look at taking away 3. So I'm going to go ahead and add on to our group. And the reason that we can add on is that hopefully by now, if we're working on this topic, hopefully we know that if we take 3 away from a number, or if we add a negative 3, we get the same answer. So for example, if I have 5 take away 3, well, we'll see that is equal to 2. Well, what if I add the opposite of 3? So if we have 5 plus negative 3, again, we'll see that will equal 2. And I've done other videos too that kind of help support your understanding with adding integers if you need help with that. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and look at what we have here is we can add negative 3, and then we go ahead and add our last term, which is y. This is unknown number. If we knew what that number is, we could just go ahead and substitute it into the bar. So what I've done right now is in that first problem that we had, I'm just representing everything that's in that quantity or the parentheses just as one group. So right now I've made one group of the opposite of 2x plus negative 3 plus y. So if we go ahead and go back, right, so I'll go ahead and recopy what I just made. So first I'm going to go ahead and show the two groups of x, and now with the negative in front of the 2 right here, okay, we can look at it as the opposite of 2x, which would be two groups of negative x. Then we are adding our negative 3 and then our other unknown number. So right now we can see that I've made one group. Now looking at here what's in front of our quantity or our parentheses, we can see that, well, right here there's a 2. I'll get to the negative here in a minute. So first let's understand what that 2 is asking us. What that 2 means is that I have two groups of everything that's inside of this parentheses or the quantity. So what I'll do is we'll go ahead and, so right now I've already made one group. Well, let's go ahead and make another group of the same thing. So again, let's go ahead and start with two groups of x, and with this negative here we can just think of it as the opposite, and then we can add. Now we add our negative 3 and then our other unknown number. So now looking at this, all I've represented is that we have two groups of negative 2x plus 3 plus y. Now let's go ahead and look, I'll use the red, at this negative. And so just the best way that I like to help make sense of negatives is just by understanding that it's just the opposite. So it's going to be the opposite of two groups of what we have. And so now what we do is we can go through and, well, we can go look at each group and find the opposite of each group. And so here, at this negative x, well, the opposite of any negative number will be its positive number. And then the same for the next negative x, so it'll be the opposite of any negative number will be its positive. Now, the 3 is a little bit easier because we can go ahead and we already know what that number is, and it's a little more concrete. So the opposite of negative 3 is positive 3. And then looking at our last term, our y, the opposite of any positive number will be its negative number. So looking here, we do the same exact thing as we did in our first group with the second group. And so this would be a positive, and this would be positive because we're looking for the opposites of negative x. The opposite of negative 3 is 3, and the opposite of any positive number is its negative. So now what we do is we can look and we can see right now that, well, right now we have two groups of 2x. I have two groups of 3, and we have two groups of negative y. So now there's two ways now that we can do it. Hopefully we see now that all I've done is use the distributive property. And so I've used the distributive property, so I multiplied negative 2 to each term within the quantity. So using the bar diagram, you can really see, it's a lot easier to see. We can see that we have two groups of 2x, I have two groups of 3, and I have two groups of negative y. And so there's two ways you can do it. We can go ahead and multiply, or we can just go ahead and count up the groups. So I'll kind of do that together in 2 steps in one. So let's first look. We have, here's 1x, 2x, 3x, 4x. And so we have 4 groups of x. Well, 2 groups of 2x would equal 4 groups of a number x. Well, we can see that 3 plus 3 we already know is 6. Well, 2 times 3 will give us 6, or 2 groups of 3 is 6. And then last we'll see that, well, we have 2 groups of negative y. And so we could write this 2 different ways. We can write it as the opposite of 2 groups of y, or I can go ahead and copy everything. We'll have, so 4x plus 6. Now, instead of adding negative two groups of y, we can also take away 2 groups of y.